The suspect of the incident met our officers at the door and shot our both officers as they stood there. Both officers suffered fatal wounds. Our officers did not draw the weapons, did not fire, never stood a chance.
So Saturday, 2 police officers were ambushed and killed in Texas. Their names, Eldemiro Garza, age 45, and Ismael Chavez, 39. Responding to a domestic disturbance in the effort to stop violence, they became its victims. That's the story of many officers' lives. We report it on this show because we realize the proportion of media coverage on such crimes compared to other stories is obviously lacking. When a violent act occurs that fits a narrative, it's amplified to suit the media's needs. What need does it serve to report a story of 2 dead officers? For the rest of the media, very little, so they shrug it off. But Fox News won't. Today we're living in an experiment, one conducted by mad social scientists, where media and its internet platforms choose stories that manipulate emotion for the sake of clicks. They put a price on rage and they sell it by the minute. So the bravery and hardships of law enforcement are ignored in favor of visual content untethered to data, but tied to a narrative. In 2020, ironically, the media refuses to clearly see the truth of policing, instead pushing stories that alarm and divide citizens. This rift is now energizing violent criminals, as Democrat mayors and other politicians follow the same path, deserting law and order, and therefore you. And they laugh at those who now try to protect themselves. Politicians are scared of the mob, scared of the media, as both cheer mayhem over peace officers. And if you cheer the police, you're made an unperson by the mob. Go ahead, say Blue Lives Matter, and see what happens to you. So even if you haven't read Orwell, you'll get to live it. How long will we endure this? Until we decide enough is enough. So we report this story not to make you angry or sad, but to help you decide when enough is enough. So, Katie, Savannah Chavez is the daughter of one of the slain officers, and she went on Twitter and tweeted her sorrow and with a hashtag of Blue Lives Matter, which drew attacks and mockery and ridicule, including a BLM blue checker, who called the hashtag racist. So she actually deleted it after mourning her own dad. All of this seems kind of an inevitability in a climate where we paint people who try to protect our safety as the problem.
Yeah, and I think that's why the situation is so frustrating, because logic and facts and mourning police officers who made the ultimate sacrifice to try and break up a domestic dispute is somehow now racist, even though the police in this situation were minorities. This is a consequence of the current situation, the current rhetoric, and people giving in to this idea, politicians specifically, that it is okay to engage in policy decisions based on this mob mentality of the demands that they are given. Police, we can say all day long, go out there every single day to sacrifice themselves. We see it. And I think that the country will come to a point where enough is enough. Again, it's a scary situation, because if you look at the St. Louis couple who dared to defend their private property with firearms when there was a mob on their front lawn, they're now being prosecuted by the far left prosecutor in that town, in that city. So that's a problem. But at some point, people are going to have to vote out the people making decisions based on this mob mentality and stand up for what is right and to stand up for the rule of law, because there's no other way to really do it.
Yeah. Dana, so far, year over year, this weekend in New York, we saw a 600% increase in shootings, 600%, and a 483% in shooting victims. But AOC has a theory on why this is the case, and I want to play this and then get your response.
Do we think this has to do with the fact that there's record unemployment in the United States right now? Maybe this has to do with the fact that people aren't paying their rent and are scared to pay their rent. And so they go out and they need to feed their child and they don't have money. So you maybe have to, they're put in a position where they feel like they either need to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night.
So Dana, you must, when you hear this, must think how ironic and bizarre it is that she is blaming violence on unemployment, given her role in creating actual unemployment.
Yes, we are thinking alike, even in a pandemic. You know, something that might help unemployment might be an Amazon center that was actually pandemic-proof,
Yes.
right? Amazon's doing great in the pandemic. And, you know, the violence that we're talking about is not like a mother huddling with a loaf of bread under her coat like Jean Valjean in Les Miserables. That is not the kind of violence that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And it was just 2 weeks ago that the City Council of New York City voted to defund the police by $1 billion. Well, that's working out really well. And to your point about the media coverage, the painting of the Black Lives Matter mural, which is really, I don't know why we call it a mural, right? It's a sign. It's a Black Lives Matter. It's 3 words. That got so much media attention. And have you seen Bill de Blasio anywhere talking about any of this? It is so unfortunate. The other thing I wanted to point out, and the reason I was really interested in that case in Texas with the officers being ambushed, is that one of the things we heard a lot about in talking about police reform is that some communities think that it would be better to send a social worker to domestic violence scenes, because that way you're not getting in you're not hauling away a father. Well, one of the reasons that you have to send an officer is because it's a place of violence, and you're trying to protect the women and the children that are in harm's way. So I don't think that the social worker thing is going to work on its own. If you want to send a social worker along with the officers, fine. But know that their lives could be in danger as well.
Yeah, Juan, to Dana's point, you know, with the Black Lives mural or painting, we have a media that is so focused on symbolism as opposed to the actual reality, which is what occurred Saturday. You know, 2 men were lost, and that mural wouldn't save them.
Well, I think the mural really represents what the nation saw in a video where a police officer was kneeling on a man's neck for nearly 9 minutes and the man died, Greg. So I think people are reacting to that. And I think, in general, police have a dangerous and stressful job. My condolences go out to those officers who died, their families. But it's more stressful when they have the added scrutiny of police officers abusing the public trust and public authority, and people are dying. Then people start to question logically exactly what the police are doing. So at the moment, I think what we're seeing is even in a more stressful situation added to the George Floyd pressure, because we have this spike in crime. But let me just say, the spike in crime is almost solely in black and brown neighborhoods, low-income communities in New York, Chicago, I could go on. And what you really have to deal with here is the problem of gangs, drug dealers, domestic abuse in some cases, that leads to this spike in violence and, of course, the easy access to guns. But if we really care about this loss of life, I think we have to deal with the systemic issues which are on display, you know, everything from the bad schools to the, you know, inability for people to get good food, to the poor quality in general of life in those communities, that a kid doesn't have a chance in many cases to succeed, or doesn't feel that way anyway. I even think the culture is terrible in terms of the music. That's my thing. And I'd say Black Lives Matter should be at the forefront of that movement as well. They should be saying, don't allow Black Lives Matter to simply be about the police, but Black Lives Matter should be about how black people treat each other. So I think on all those levels, we have to just be honest. This is not a citywide crime spree anywhere. This is something that's happening in our most desperate communities.
All right. So, Jesse, Juan mentions a lot of variables. However, those variables existed before this massive spike. So clearly something else is added onto this that has little to do with those other variables.
Yeah, and we know what that is. And I want to salute Juan for saying what he said. I agree with almost everything Juan just said. The thing I would add is that, you know, a lot of the problems in these cities where you're seeing a lot of the carnage, they've been run by Democrats for 50 years. And we've been seeing the same thing again and again and again. So maybe if we change the systemic problems, we have to change the person or people that are running that system. In terms of the media, Greg, they don't report the news. They just report a narrative. That's why half the country is either angry or unenlightened because they're not getting the truth. And that's why people come to Fox to hear the truth. And the truth is there's a crime wave going on. New York City homicides are up 25%. Kansas City's had its most deadly year ever. Chicago, deadliest year so far in 25 years, and I can keep naming cities. We had a white mom killed after she said all lives matter in Indianapolis. There was a Hispanic man that drove his truck and murdered a white guy because he says he hates white people and hates Donald Trump. He was charged with a hate crime. There's stuff like this all over the place. I came back to the city the other week. Down in Lower Manhattan, there's a whole Black Lives Matter encampment by City Hall. You can't jog near there. You can't walk your dog. You can't run a stroller. It smells worse than San Francisco. And they've desecrated architectural masterpieces. Some of the architecture, some of the buildings in that area, just vandalized with graffiti that says F the pigs or F the cops. It's horrible. So the Democrats thought they could ride this wave of energy to November and win. I think that's absolutely wrong. I think this wave became a crime wave. It's going to blow up in their face. People are dying. And it's going to destroy their cities, which are their power centers, because everyone's just fleeing and leaving them in tatters.